Hello friends. My name is Ryan, and I'm going to tell you a story named The Man Who Biked Around the World, which is a very amazing story full of twists. So let's start. It all began on a quiet morning in Yorkshire, England. Alastair Humphreys, a man in his late 20s with a restless spirit, stood outside his modest home staring at the old bicycle he'd inherited from his father. It was rusty, the gears creaked, and the seat had seen better days, but to Alastair, it was the symbol of freedom, the key to a dream he had harbored since childhood. He wanted to bike around the world. Not just a town, a city, or even a continent. No, Alastair's dream was grander than most could imagine. People laughed at him when he shared his idea. "How will you do it?" they mocked. "Do you even have enough money? What if something goes wrong?" Even his closest friends doubted him, but Alastair didn't let their skepticism deter him. Instead, he saved every penny, worked odd jobs, and spent countless hours preparing for the journey of a lifetime. On a crisp September morning, he waved goodbye to his family and friends, pedaling away into the unknown. The first few days were uneventful. Alastair biked through the familiar streets of his town and then crossed into France. The beauty of the countryside and the novelty of the adventure filled him with joy. But by the time he reached the Alps, the journey began to test his resolve. The steep, winding roads were relentless. His legs ached, and his lungs burned. He found himself questioning his decision more than once, but the thought of giving up was unbearable. One night, while camping under the stars in the foothills of the Alps, Alastair had his first encounter with the unexpected. As he sat by his small campfire, enjoying a simple meal of bread and cheese, he noticed a shadow moving in the distance. At first, he dismissed it as an animal, but the shadow grew closer. When it was within earshot, Alastair called out, "Hello." "Who's there?" A man emerged from the darkness, his face obscured by the flickering firelight. He wore a long coat and carried a walking stick. "Evening," the man said in a deep voice. "You're quite far from home, aren't you?" Alastair felt a chill run down his spine. "I suppose I am," he replied cautiously. "Just passing through." The man chuckled. "Passing through the Alps? That's ambitious. Where are you headed?" "Around the world," Alastair said, trying to sound confident. The man's laugh grew louder, echoing in the still night. "Around the world? On that old bike? You've got courage, I'll give you that. But courage isn't always enough." Before Alastair could respond, the man turned and walked away, disappearing into the night as mysteriously as he had appeared. Alastair couldn't shake the encounter. Who was that man? How had he found him in the middle of nowhere? And what did he mean by "courage isn't always enough"? The next day, Alastair continued his journey, but the man's words lingered in his mind. He cycled through Italy, Greece, and Turkey, each country presenting its own challenges and surprises. In Istanbul, he met a young woman named Layla, who offered him a place to stay. Layla was fascinated by Alastair's journey and spent hours listening to his stories. She even helped him repair his bike, which had taken quite a beating on the rough roads. But Layla also warned him. "The world isn't as kind as you think, Alastair," she said. "Be careful who you trust." Her warning proved prophetic. In Iran, Alastair's bike was stolen while he was resting at a roadside cafe. Desperate and heartbroken, he spent hours searching for it, to no avail. Just as he was about to give up, a local man named Reza approached him. Reza, a mechanic by trade, offered to help Alastair build a new bike from spare parts. Though skeptical at first, Alastair accepted the offer. Over the next few days, the two men worked side by side, forging an unlikely friendship. Reza's bike was far from perfect, but it was sturdy enough to carry Alastair through the deserts of Central Asia and into China. By the time he reached Beijing, Alastair was exhausted but determined. He'd faced harsh weather, treacherous roads, and moments of crushing loneliness, but he'd also experienced incredible kindness from strangers who had shared their food, their homes, and their stories with him. In Beijing, Alastair received a package from his family. Inside was a small notebook filled with messages of encouragement. "Keep going," one note read. "We're proud of you," said another. The messages brought tears to his eyes and renewed his resolve. He knew he couldn't stop now. From China, Alastair traveled to Southeast Asia, Australia, and then across the Pacific to the Americas. Each new country brought its own set of adventures and challenges. In Bolivia, he narrowly avoided a landslide. In the United States, he was chased by a pack of wild dogs. In Canada, he encountered a bear while camping in the wilderness. But through it all, he never lost sight of his goal. As he neared the end of his journey, cycling through the rolling hills of Scotland, Alastair reflected on everything he'd experienced. He'd started as an idealistic dreamer, but the journey had transformed him. He'd learned to adapt, to persevere, and to trust in the kindness of strangers. He'd also learned that the world, for all its challenges, was a beautiful and inspiring place. When Alastair finally returned to Yorkshire, he was greeted by a crowd of friends, family, and neighbours. They cheered as he rode into town, his once rusty bike now a symbol of triumph. Alastair had done it. He'd biked around the world. As he stood before the crowd, Alastair raised his hands and said, "This journey wasn't just about me. It was about proving that no dream is too big if you're willing to work for it. And it was about discovering the magic of human connection. And that, my friends, is the story of the man who biked around the world." If Alastair's journey inspired you, imagine what you could achieve if you set your mind to it. So, don't wait. Chase your dreams, no matter how impossible they may seem. And if you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more amazing tales. Let's try every day to make our lives extraordinary.